Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something, well, a little different. Usually we take this wide-angle lens to massive topics, the history of the internet or the science of black holes. But today we are going totally
You
microscopic.
like topic.
Yeah, we are zooming in on a single hour in a single living room on a specific Monday night in 1966.
January 24th, 1966, to be exact.
Exactly. And to set the stage for everyone listening, we aren't just analyzing some broad historical event here. We are unpacking a transcript, a literal word-for-word record of a phenomenon that, quite frankly, defies easy explanation.
It really does.
We are looking at the Seth Material. Specifically, we are diving deep into session 226 of the early sessions, book 5 of the Seth Material.
And I think this is a really, really crucial entry point. Like, for those who might know the name Seth or the medium Chain Roberts, but maybe they think it's just generic New Age fluff.
Right, the crystal ball stuff.
Yeah, exactly. This session is going to be a massive wake-up call for them.
Yeah.
Because it is highly technical, it is highly evidential, and honestly, it is weirdly funny. It's got layers.
It's a very specific flavor of weird, isn't it? I love it.
Yeah.
But before we get into the cat, the physics, and the corporate espionage, and yes, we have all three of those things on the docket today. We need to do some housekeeping.
Always.
A massive thank you to the publisher, New Awareness Network, for keeping this material in print. Because without them, I mean, these transcripts would just be dusting away in an archive somewhere at Yale.
Absolutely. And a quick reminder to everyone listening, this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Yep.
Our goal here isn't to convert you or anything like that. It's simply to help you navigate this really dense, fascinating text. We want to impartially look at what happens when we really pull the thread on these sessions.
So let's dial in the coordinates. Elmira, New York. It's winter. It's 9 p.m. on a Monday. Who is in the room? Paint the picture for us.
Okay, so you have the standard trio, well, duo normally, but a trio tonight. You have Jane Roberts. He's the author, the poet, this real firecracker personality who, in this moment, is acting as the medium or the channel for the personality known as Seth.
Okay.
Then you have her husband, Ruburt Butts. Seth calls him Joseph. He is the anchor of the whole operation. He's sitting there with a pen and a notebook, scribbling down every single word in his own shorthand system.
Which is a feat in itself, honestly, considering how fast Seth can talk when he gets going on the physics stuff.
Oh, it's incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And tonight, there's a third person in the room, a witness, a close friend of theirs named John Bradley. And Seth refers to him as Philip.
Philip, right.
Now, John isn't just some casual observer here to see a magic trick. He's a businessman. He works for Searle Drug, which is a major pharmaceutical company, and he has just returned from a business trip to Cleveland.
And that business trip is going to become very, very important later on.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the whole detective story part of the evening, we really have to talk about the mood in the room. Because this session doesn't start with a bang. It starts with it starts with a cat.
It starts with the fallout of a hypnosis experiment that went slightly off the rails.
Let's break this down for everyone. This is what we're calling segment 1. The hypnosis experiment and the ghost in the room. So the Friday prior to this session, just a few days before Jane and Rob had friends over, a couple named Bill and Peggy Gallagher.
Right.
And Jane, who is just starting to really explore her own psychic abilities, decides, hey, let me try to hypnotize you.
It was very spontaneous. It wasn't a clinical setting at all. It was more like a party trick that got real very fast. But apparently Jane was surprisingly good at it. She gets Peggy Gallagher into this really deep trance. Now, here's the kicker, the important detail. Peggy has a severe, genuine phobia of cats.
Seth actually calls her the cat lover in the notes, which is just dripping with that dry, disembodied sarcasm that I absolutely love.
Oh, yeah. He is very sarcastic. She is absolutely terrified of him. But Jane, being a bit of a chaotic scientist in the moment, decides she wants to test the limits of this trance state. So she picks up their cat, Willie, and places him directly on Peggy's stomach while she's under.
Which sounds like the setup for an absolute disaster. I mean, if someone put a tarantula on me while I was sleeping and I woke up, there'd be a hole in the ceiling. It is wildly irresponsible.
Precisely. It was a huge risk. But here's the thing. Peggy doesn't scream. She lies there, completely calm, and actually starts stroking the cat.
Wow.
But the truly fascinating part, and the part Seth zeroes in on during this Monday session, is what happened when she woke up.
The rationalization. This is where the psychology gets really interesting.
Yes. When Peggy came out of the trance, she admitted she felt a weight on her stomach. She knew something was there physically. But she didn't say, oh my God, there was a cat on me. She told herself, oh, that must have been Jane touching me.
Even though Jane was standing completely across the room.
Even though the sensation was clearly fur and the weight of an animal, her mind, her ego could not accept the reality that she had been comfortable with a cat. It totally clashed with her core identity as someone with a severe phobia. So her brain rewrote the sensory data. It created a safe explanation. It was just Jane's hand.
And this is where Seth, speaking on Monday night, starts to dissect human psychology. Because he wasn't just observing this from somewhere else, he was highly amused by it.
He says he watched with much pleasure and amusement. He points out that this is exactly what we all do, all the time. We have a worldview. In Peggy's case, cats are terrifying. When reality contradicts that worldview, we don't change the view. We hallucinate a new reality to fit the view. We edit the tape in real time.
But Seth drops a detail right here that stops being funny and starts being, well, kind of expansive and eerie. He mentions that he wasn't just aware of the situation conceptually. He says, and I'm quoting here, he was looking out at us from Jane's eyes.
That is a very heavy statement. It's one of those lines you might just glaze right over if you're reading the transcript fast, but stop and think about the actual mechanics of that.
It implies a sort of ride-along situation, like a pilot and a co-pilot.
Yeah.
Jane is driving the car, she's doing the hypnotizing, but Seth is looking through the windshield.
Exactly. And what he sees through that windshield is what I really want to focus on here. Because he notes that when he looks through physical human eyes, he sees individuals. He sees Bill, Peggy, Rob. But he says this is a very limited view.
What does he see normally then? Like, if he takes off the Jane glasses, what does that living room look like to him?
He says, and I want to quote this exactly because it's both beautiful and incredibly strange. He says, my own vision sees composite electromagnetic images embodying our pasts, presents, and futures.
Okay, let's unpack that. Composite electromagnetic images. That sounds like hard sci-fi jargon. What is he actually describing?
Well, imagine you are looking at a strip of film reel. You hold it up to the light. Usually as humans, we see one frame at a time, the frame of right now. That's how we see each other frozen in the present moment.
Yeah.
Seth sees the entire reel unspooled all at once.
Okay.
He sees the baby you were, the adult you are, the elder you will be, and all the choices you made in between. And he sees all of that glowing simultaneously as a single massive structure.
So to Seth, you aren't just a person sitting in a chair. You are a long, glowing snake of time.
That's a great analogy, actually. A four-dimensional object. The physical body that we see is really just the tiny tip of the iceberg that happens to be poking into three-dimensional space at this exact second.
It really challenges the whole idea of identity, because if I'm this composite image, then my past isn't gone. It's down the tail.
It's a fundamental part of your current structure. It's still there. And that smooth transition actually brings us to the absolute meat of this session. It's what we're calling segment 2, inverted time and the malleable past.
Man, this is the part where I honestly had to read the transcript 3 times over. It gets so heavy.
It's incredibly dense, yeah. But it is the core of his entire philosophy.
So Seth turns his attention to John Bradley Phillip, who is just casually reading a newspaper in the living room while this is going on. And Seth essentially snaps his fingers. He says, put down the paper, listen to me. Class is in session.
He demands attention. He wants to explain this concept of the inverted time system.
Inverted time. Okay, because we are taught from kindergarten that time is an arrow, right? Past goes to present, present goes to future. It's a straight line. But Seth says no.
Seth argues that this linear view is nothing more than a sensory illusion. He says that because we are biological creatures wrapped in physical bodies, we can only perceive one moment after another. It's like reading a book one word at a time.
Right.
The whole story exists all at once. The physical book is finished and printed, but we have to scan it line by line to make any sense of it.
But he goes much further than just saying everything exists at once. He starts talking about the actual malleability of the past. There is this quote that completely blew my mind. He says, the past exists as far as the individual is concerned as a pattern of electromagnetic currents within the brain, and these connections constantly change.
This is the massive takeaway right here. The past is not a statue made of marble. It is not locked away in a museum behind glass. The past is living tissue inside you right now.
So if I change my mind about a past event, do I literally change the past?
Neurologically and electromagnetically, yes. Seth says we are not, and I quote, imprisoned by the past. If you were traumatized by something 10 years ago, that trauma exists as a current. a literal wire in your brain today. If you reframe that experience, if you change your perspective through therapy or just personal growth, you are literally rewiring that past event. You are changing its electrical charge.
You're altering the data itself.
You're altering the reality of it within your own system. And since your system creates your reality, you are effectively changing history.
That is incredibly empowering when you really think about it. It means we aren't just passive victims of what happened to us. We are active editors.
Exactly. We are editors of a film that is still actively being shot. But then, Seth throws a huge wrench in the gears. If the past is fluid and changeable, what about the future?
Right, and this is where he brings up J.W. Dunn and J.B. Priestley. Now, I had to actually look these guys up because Seth just drops their names like everyone in the room should instantly know them. Who were they?
They were pretty big deals in the early 20th century. Dunn was an aeronautical engineer, very smart technical guy. He wrote a famous book called An Experiment with Time back in 1927. He started noticing that he would dream about things like a volcano erupting or a specific train crash, and then a week later, it would actually happen in real life.
So he was fully precognitive.
Yes, and being an engineer, he tried to map it out mathematically. He came up with this theory of serial time. He thought that if you could somehow get a high enough vantage point, like looking down from an airplane, you could see the road ahead. And Priestley was a playwright who took those mathematical ideas and put them into pop culture through his plays.
And Seth critiques them.
He essentially gives them a solid B-. He says Dunn was on the right track, but just didn't go deep enough into the mechanics. Seth says Dunn completely missed the concept of the self.
The self, capital S.
Seth introduces a hierarchy here. He says, we have self one, that's you and me, right now, worrying about the time and what we're having for dinner. But we also have self two.
And what exactly does self two do?
Self two is the part of us that has that higher vantage point. Self two is the one looking down from the airplane. Self two can see the probabilities. Self two is the scout on the mountain.
Probabilities, not the future. That's an important distinction, isn't it?
It is absolutely crucial to understanding the Seth material. Seth says, and I'm quoting again, there is no cause and effect as you understand it. There are only probabilities.
That sounds like total chaos. If there's no cause and effect, how does anything in our world function?
He means there is no single linear cause and effect. There is a web. When you have a hunch, when you get a bad feeling about getting on a certain bus, or a sudden urge to call an old friend that is self-2 whispering down to self-1, self-2 sees a probable future and sends a signal down the line to warn you or guide you.
Okay, so let's play this out. Let's say I get a hunch. Don't walk down that dark alley. I listen to it. I walk the other way. I avoid getting mugged.
Right. You successfully navigated the probability.
So the mugging didn't happen.
In your current experience, no. You navigated around it. But, and really hold on to your hat here. Seth says, such an event will, however, occur within another time system for all probabilities to become actual.
Wait, so I did get mugged.
A version of you did. A probable self.
That is terrifying and also incredibly confusing. Why does every single probability have to happen somewhere?
Because the universe, according to Seth, is entirely exhaustive. It explores every single avenue of creativity and experience. It's like the ultimate choose-your-own-adventure book, but the catch is that someone is reading every single path simultaneously.
So when we talk about making a choice, we aren't selecting one reality and destroying all the others. We are just selecting which track our specific consciousness is going to ride on.
You're choosing your focus. You're tuning your radio dial. All the stations are broadcasting at the same time, but you only hear the one you actively tune into.
This feels exactly like the multiverse theory that Marvel and every other sci-fi movie is doing right now.
It absolutely is. But you have to remember, Seth was dictating this in a living room in upstate New York in 1966. This was long before Doctor Strange or quantum mechanics made it cool in the mainstream. It was truly revolutionary stuff.
It is really heavy philosophy. And usually when someone gets this abstract and theoretical, I start to check out a bit. I start thinking, okay, nice theory, buddy, but can you actually prove any of this?
And that is exactly what makes session 226 so special. Seth doesn't just sit there and lecture them. He pivots. He essentially says, okay, Joseph Phillip, let me show you how this works in real time. Let's do a live demo.
Which leads us perfectly into segment 3, the clairvoyant tests, or, as I like to call it in my notes, the case of the stuffy hotel room.
Right. So John Bradley Phillip is sitting there. He has just come back from a business trip to Cleveland. Jane Roberts did not go on this trip, Rob did not go. They haven't really talked about any of the details. In fact, Jane was actually out of the room when John even mentioned to Rob that he went to Cleveland.
So she is completely blind to this.
So
and Seth just starts reading John's mail.
he just starts rattling off data points. He tells John to get his pen and write down 12th Street.
What does that mean to John?
John verifies that he ate at the Manger Hotel in Cleveland. He wasn't entirely sure of the exact address at that very moment, but he later confirms that the hotel is located right on the corner of 13th and, wait for it, 12th Street.
Direct hit, right out of the gate.
Then Seth gets highly sensory. He says, I see a stuffy place. He talks extensively about the air quality being oppressive.
Which is such a weird detail to guess if you're just making things up. You'd usually guess a nice view or a noisy neighbor or something. But stuffy.
And it was the defining feature of John's trip. He stayed at the Sheraton Hilton, and he confirms the room was incredibly hot and poorly ventilated. He actually suffered from severe insomnia because of it. He spent the nights tossing and turning because he couldn't breathe comfortably.
So Seth is picking up on the literal physical discomfort John experienced in the past.
He's tapping directly into that electromagnetic record we talked about earlier. The sensory memory of the stuffy room is burned into John's neurology. Seth is just pulling the file and reading it.
Then he moves on to the people involved in the trip. Seth mentions a meeting with a fat man.
This part is actually hilarious to read. Seth sees a man who is heavy. John confirms he met with a government representative named Mr. McEwen. But John, being a loyal friend or colleague, actually starts arguing with Seth about the man's weight.
He defends the guy.
He does. He says, well, he's heavy, but I wouldn't call him fat. He says he's not grossly obese. And Seth basically just shrugs, metaphorically speaking, and says, to me, the image is fat. It really shows that Seth interprets visual data in his own unique way. He's not just accessing John's vocabulary, he's accessing the raw visual image of the man and making his own judgment.
And then we get the corner bar and grill.
Confirmed. There was a corner bar right near the hotel.
But the most impressive part for me wasn't the physical locations or the people. It was the mind reading, the 3 alternate plans.
Yes. This is where Seth steps fully into John's self-2 territory. Seth says, I see 3 alternate plans. And John just freezes because he admits he's been secretly juggling 3 specific career paths in his head.
What were the plans?
Plan A was to buy a restaurant in his hometown. Plan B was to stay at Searle Drug in his current role in Williamsport. And Plan C was to demand a transfer and a promotion.
And Seth knew all of this.
Seth not only knew it, he analyzed it on the spot. He notes that 2 were not followed, and there is a question over the 3rd. This perfectly mirrored John's internal conflict. He hadn't told Jane about the restaurant idea at all. That was entirely private.
There was one moment of confusion during this test, though. The apartment.
Right, this is a great point. Seth says, I see an apartment, a private meeting. And John initially pushes back. He says, no, I was at a hotel. I didn't go to anyone's apartment.
So is Seth actually wrong here?
No. This is a masterclass in how clairvoyance actually works. Seth sees function, not just literal form. Later on, John realizes that the fat man, Mr. McEwen, had invited John to his private hotel suite to have a highly confidential discussion.
Ah!
Right. It wasn't a public conference room. It was a living space with a bed and a sitting area. To Seth's perception, looking at the energetic vibe of the meeting, private, domestic, confidential sounding out, it registered to him as apartment.
That makes perfect sense. It's symbolic literalism. He's reading the energy of the space rather than the architectural blueprint.
Exactly. And in that apartment, they discussed money.
Yeah.
Which leads Seth to predict financial difficulties for the company.
He decides to play stock analyst.
He warns John that Searle Drug is entering a period of crisis. And John confirms it later. The stock was wobbling, management was shaking up. But Seth gives him very specific, targeted advice. He tells him to write it out.
Write it out. Just stay the course.
He tells John that despite the chaos, you can go as far as you wish. He implies that John has a specific purpose or trajectory there that he shouldn't abandon out of fear.
So if we step back and look at this whole sequence, Seth correctly identifies the street, the sensory details of the room, the specific people, the private unvoiced thoughts in John's head, and the macroeconomic status of his employer.
It is a full spectrum reading, and it serves a very specific purpose. Seth isn't just showing off his parlor tricks. He's proving the underlying philosophy from segment 2.
How so? Connect the dots for us.
If Seth can clearly see the past, like the stuffy room, and the future, like the company's financial trajectory and the private thoughts, the 3 plans, he is demonstrating that he stands firmly outside of John's linear timeline. He is the observer on the hill.
He's proving the inverted time concept by demonstrating it practically. He's saying, I can see your timeline all at once, therefore time is not what you think it is.
Precisely. It grounds the abstract philosophy in undeniable evidence. And just to show he can do it with anyone, anywhere, he throws him one last quick test. This is segment 4, The Nature of Reality and Dr. Instream.
Who is Dr. Instream?
We don't really know, honestly. He's not in the room. He's another target entirely. Seth just tunes into him like turning a radio dial to a new station.
He says something like, give us a moment for our Dr. Instream material.
And the images come incredibly fast. Glass, wisteria, a limp, a note from a woman.
Wisteria is such a specific flower to mention.
It is very specific.
Yeah.
And the limp theft notes a physical disturbance that is bothering the doctor. It just reinforces the idea that physical distance doesn't matter to Seth at all. If we are all just composite electromagnetic patterns, then here and there are just as illusory as past and future.
It's non-local consciousness in action.
It's the internet before the internet was even conceived. Everything is connected in the network.
So we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We have a cat that isn't a cat to the person experiencing it, time that isn't a straight line, and a business trip to Cleveland that was basically an open book to a disembodied personality. If you, the listener, take away just a few nuggets from this deep dive, what should they be?
I'd say there are 3 big takeaways from session 226.
Hit me. Let's do a bullet list for everyone.
Number 1, reframing the past. You need to understand that your history is clay, not stone. If you are holding on to a grudge or a trauma, realize that it is an active energy current in your brain right now. You have the power to change its charge. You can rewrite the code.
That is honestly the most practical, therapeutic advice I've heard in a long time. It bridges the gap between metaphysics and modern psychology perfectly.
It really does. Number 2, trust your intuition. Those weird hunches you get, that isn't just paranoia or wishful thinking. That is self-2 scouting the terrain ahead. That is you getting intel from a probable future. You need to listen to it.
And number 3.
Number 3, the world is weird. And I mean that in the absolute best way possible. The John Bradley evidence strongly suggests that we are living in a reality that is far more complex, interconnected, and magical than our daily grind suggests. We are electromagnetic entities having a momentary physical experience.
We are 4-dimensional creatures wearing 3-dimensional glasses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Now, we have effectively summarized the highlights of the session, but we cannot replace the experience of actually reading it for yourself.
No, absolutely not. The nuances in Seth's dictation, the subtle interactions between Jane and Rob, you really have to read it yourself to get the full impact.
We highly encourage you to go to the source. You can find the early sessions at sethcenter.com. Specifically, look for the early sessions book 5 under the early sessions tab.
And go, and huge thanks to the New Awareness Network for keeping this vital work alive and accessible to the public.
Before we let you go, I want to leave you with a thought. A little probability exercise based on what we've talked about today.
Let's hear it.
Seth says, all probabilities become actual. Every choice is made somewhere in the web.
Right.
So, there is a version of you who decided not to listen to this deep dive today. A version of you who saw the title and just scrolled right past it.
What are they doing right now?
Are they bored? Are they stuck in traffic without anything interesting to listen to? Or did they find something else entirely?
And more importantly, will they eventually find their way back to this information? Or is this version of you, the one listening right now, the one who is just a little bit ahead of the curve?
I like to think our listeners are the self-2 of their respective groups.
I like that. The scouts on the mountain.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Keep your electromagnetic currents moving, and we will catch you in the next probability.